Well, hello, free people of the Rocky Mountain region, and welcome to this Free State Colorado interview. Today, I'm joined by Eliseo Gonzalez. Eliseo is a small business owner, former radio show host, vice chairman of the Libertarian Party of Colorado, and candidate for Arapahoe County Commissioner, District 5. Well, Eliseo, I hope you are well, and thank you for joining me today.
Hey, likewise, Brandon. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Well, let's get started with learning a little bit about you. Eliseo, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So great question. A little bit about me. I was born in California, but immigrated here when I was like one. I've lived in Arapahoe County in Aurora for most of my life. I went to school, Kenton Elementary, West Middle School, and then ultimately graduated from Aurora Central High School. I went probably the last year that they offered advanced placement in calculus, trigonometry, and such, and I was part of that class. This was around 2008. After that, I believe they installed like Common Core and have taught it ever since. I'm not too familiar with that part of it, but I was there at least for the last AP class in that sector. I went to school at Fort Hays State University. I have a degree in philosophy and in political science. And my passion is my community. I love my community. I love to spend some of my volunteer hours in my community, handing out food, working with coalitions, food banks for the homeless, and things like that. I'm very passionate about where I live. And I ask myself the question of if I think about the next 4 years, what feelings come to mind? And for me, it was worry. I'm very worried about the county. And that's one of the reasons why I decided to run for county commissioner. And I think I'm a good bridge between the community and local government. People need to realize that local government is very important, and I want to be the voice for the people. I want to represent the millennials that are underrepresented, especially in the county commissioner area. I want to represent the Hispanic community. I want to represent the working families. Anyone who lives in Arapahoe County, which is the working class, I want to represent them. That's a little bit about me.
Well, great. Well, it's interesting. I think that you've lived in Arapahoe County for most of your life, and that includes Aurora. So, what do you think about all this news around the Venezuelan gangs in the city and everything we're hearing nationally?
That is a great question again. I happen to think that we're probably somewhere in the middle between people saying there's absolutely nothing going on and then people saying that Aurora has been completely taken over by Venezuelan gangs. I pretty much think probably the center is true. It's false that nothing is going on. There is something going on in Aurora for sure. Yesterday, I drove through Alameda getting onto I-225 and I saw two motorcycles. Obviously, they weren't registered. They were dirt bikes. They didn't have any licensing on them. And I saw people, men, on the back of them riding like on the back with like backpacks and seemed really out of place, especially in Aurora, Colorado. But it sounds like that is slowly turning into the new norm. There is something going on in Aurora. Is it a complete Venezuelan gang takeover of Aurora? I think the answer to that is no. However, Aurora has always had a gang problem, even when I was in school. I can remember avoiding going to the bathroom because the odds of you getting jumped in there, right, for money or for things like that were pretty high, especially in Aurora Central, right? That was a pretty high possibility. I know that there are Aurora residents who are of Venezuelan origin, and I also know that there are Venezuelan gangs as well as other gangs operating in Aurora. Is it a whole takeover of the city? That's probably not true per se, but there's a lot that we don't see, right? There's a lot of markets, there's a lot of human trafficking that we don't see. All of those things are not reported, and I do think they're happening in Aurora. And I also think that the people in charge right now, including the state government, the governor, all of them are being very silent about the thing. They're trying to make it about an immigration issue or about empathy when it's really about community safety. And it's about what should be done about people that are terrorizing other people. Not all Venezuelans are gang members, but the Venezuelan gang members are Venezuelan by nature. I mean, they have to be. They're Venezuelan gang members. I know there have been reports that Aurora PD, or as well as Arapahoe County Sheriff, have arrested some top leaders, if you will, per se. But there's definitely signs that there are a lot of, at least in my opinion, criminal activity going on that isn't reported. Um, but yeah, you're seeing signs of it right now for sure. So not a whole takeover of the city per se officially, but there's a lot of stuff going on in the dark that we don't know. That I know the community is concerned about.
Well, you said that word new norm, and I think that's one of the biggest things that kind of frightens people, like you like yourself have been in the community for so long. I was born and raised not too far from there in Jefferson County, just on the other side of Denver. And this is something we don't want to see happen in our communities to for this to become normalized, right? Like you said, there's always been gangs, there's always been some level of crime and violence. Unfortunately, that's the way of the world. But to see more organized crime, to see kind of a newer effort come in with these newer gangs. And you have to think, I mean, what do you think about this illegal immigration issue tied to this criminal organizations? I mean, do you think like you said, the governor, those people out there, everybody's always talking about what Kyle Clark thinks on Nine News. Drives me crazy on Twitter. People are always saying that. But there's definitely a concerted effort by the media or by the people in charge, if you will, of the city of Denver and the governor and the legislature. They want to deny the issue entirely, right? They don't want to talk about crime. They don't want to talk about illegal immigration. They don't want to talk about how their policies could potentially be causing harm to the people in their communities. So, I mean, what role do you think illegal immigration is playing into all of this gang violence and everything we're seeing on the news?
So, a really quick comment before I talk about the illegal immigration issue. But it was interesting that even, let's say, 5 years ago, even a little bit after COVID, you would still see, every now and then you'd see cars with, like, let's say, expired license plates and tags like that. But it was, for the most part, rare. Even in Aurora, there's a website, and I forgot the name of the website, but it used to be like, it used to categorize the city that you live in and like give it a nickname, right? And it was like Cherry Creek is like the really bougie city, blah blah blah. Stay away from, certain cities. And then it said Aurora was like crime. What did they say? Was crime adjacent. So Aurora used to be perceived as like close, maybe to a rough neighborhood, but not the rough neighborhood by any means. And now it's incredibly normalized. You see a lot of things that are just out of whack. Expired license plates, which I don't want to get into, but it just kind of shows you that there's less respect and less care for law in Aurora, and that typically leads to criminals being more brave in wanting to do things to the community. In my neck of the woods, I would say it's relatively safe unless you own a car of like lesser value. I used to have a small Mazda, and the Mazda was from like 2011. Wasn't the fanciest car, but it got me around. Very affordable car. And I remember that, a couple of years ago, they had passed a law saying something like anything below $2,000 or something of value for the car wasn't considered anything serious. Well, guess what? There was a lot of car break-ins, and my car was unfortunately one of them in my neighborhood, right outside my door. It was crazy. And I did talk to a criminal defense attorney. He said that the number one thing that people asked him was, how much jail time am I getting? Or how serious of a punishment this is. And it sounds like career criminals always weigh that out as to like it's like an investment for them. How risky is this investment to go out and start picking people's, breaking their door handles and sneaking in? Well, if the crime is kind of, you know, uh, categorized as a misdemeanor, they're going to want to go out and do more. And that'll create more career criminals. I think the illegal immigration issue that we're having plays a massive role in that. And it not only affects Colorado as a whole, but it affects my community. I'm a member of the Hispanic community, proudly a member of the Hispanic community. I have deep roots in Mexico. Both of my parents are Mexican. My dad was from Mexico City. My mom is from Guanajuato. Legend has it we are related somewhere down the gene pool to a gentleman by the name of Miguel Hidalgo, which was one of the founding members of Mexico. He's the reason why they have El Grito Mexicano, right, where you ring the bell and then you scream for all of these things to live on forever, right? Viva la independencia, viva la patria, all of these things, right? That Mexicans are very proud of, and pretty sure it belongs somewhere in my genealogy. I have a lot of strong Mexican roots. What we're seeing right now is a crazy influx of illegal immigrants, and the few that come by that want to do crime are getting away with it. And that's the reality. Is I'm still convinced that a good majority of people that come here want to work. I see it, but that few that want to do crime can do it without any consequences, really. Slap on the wrist, maybe you're let out on bail, and then you can continue to terrorize the community. And I don't think that's right. I think that the current government has let that go too far. I've even talked with Democrat voters while I'm out door knocking and talking with them, and they're worried about safety. And they no longer have confidence in their local government or anyone who's a Democrat who's like okay with their communities being terrorized. So it's not that diversity is not a is it's not that diversity is not a bad idea. I think diversity is good, but when you have no safeguards for those that are committing violence and property crimes, the community suffers in general. So that, my heart goes out to the entire community, to the Mexican community, Mexican American community, to South American community, the Central American community, even the Venezuelan community that wants to work. They're being terrorized by gangs, and no one is doing anything about it.
Well, that's a really good point too, because with especially with like the what we heard about at these apartment buildings in Aurora, the victims were the other immigrants, right? They were people here who maybe were here illegally in the country, so they didn't have or didn't feel like they had the same protections of the law. That, like you said, it seems to be less and less these days, but they didn't feel like they had the protection. So if they get victimized by some criminal gang, what's their recourse? What are they supposed to do? And it allows these criminals to become more powerful, to become more active in the community with less fear, because their targets are people who aren't necessarily going to turn them in or get too involved in these legal proceedings against them, right?
Yes. And what happens is that becomes their new norm, right? They can no longer depend on local government, anyone to help them out. They need to rely on whatever keeps them in that level, whether it be involving themselves in the gangs themselves so that they can feel protected, right? Whether that be selling illicit substances or human trafficking. All of these things create this weird bubble because nobody is going in there and talking to them about what they can do beyond the gangs. And nobody's taking charge, right? In trying to solve that gang issue. The gang issue, like I said, goes back even to when I was in high school, right? It goes way back then. Nobody's done anything about it. It doesn't feel like nobody's doing anything about it right now, although they did arrest some of the top members of the gang, as far as I know, but there could be more done. And I think the community as a whole has to come together and help out where we can, right? I firmly believe that the solution is a free market solution where neighbors can help neighbors and not just depend on the local government coming in and then saying, oh, we're going to help you here, so we're going to increase taxes from here, here, and here. That doesn't really help anyone. What I found out is this: when you increase taxes to fund programs like a program for welfare, or a program for this and that, well, the government doesn't really have a lot of offices to handle all of that. Most of that goes to nonprofits. If the nonprofits are shady, they will not report salaries. I know a few that have like CEOs that are making 200, 350 a year. For what? They're not offering any of these services to the people, so that's money wasted. So I don't think that the problem can be solved with just throwing money at it or throwing money at the government or the government taking your money and then thinking it can solve it. It has to come from the community as a whole. We have to stand up to that kind of violence.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I am a strong believer that community is really the solution, right? Like, somebody who believes in liberty and free markets and a lot of those types of ideas. I think we both understand that the government's not going to solve our problems. that the state is not going to come in there. If they just get enough of our money and they just have enough control over our lives, they're not going to come in and solve these problems in our society. It's really going to come down to individuals working together in a community to keep their streets clean, to keep kids out of trouble, to keep kids out of gangs, to make sure that those communities are well maintained and safe. And I really think that's ultimately what it comes down to in the end, is just building strong communities and getting the government out of the way that prevents, families from existing or tries to interfere with families and kids and that relationship, and then just allows people in the community to build those relationships themselves and create something that's gonna actually have a positive impact, and those communities take a long time to grow and to build. But what I really want to touch on too is you talked about Democrat voters that you've talked to. So I know you're running for office, you're out campaigning, doing some door knocking. What are you hearing from people in the community? What are you hearing from people in Arapahoe County about this issue? I mean, what do they think? What's your feel for what people down in the community there are thinking about?
When I go out door knocking and I talk to somebody who has voted blue their whole life, which has been a large chunk of the people that I've had the opportunity of talking to, the top three things that they're worried about is crime, property taxes, and the economy. Those three things are keeping Americans or anyone that lives in the county from moving forward. I talked to a mom who's a veteran, voted blue her entire life. They're worried about crime. They're worried about people breaking into their house because it's already happened, even in my neighborhood. They're worried about their children not being able to purchase a home because interest rates are too high. Jobs are not in demand right now, or they're not paying as much than like they used to. And they're worried about not enough services or not enough companies wanting to move into Arapahoe County, right? And the county commissioner's role, they can influence a lot of that, especially when it comes to safety, partnering with, let's say, the sheriff's office or any other organization that wants to help out citizenship with like safety, right? You can partner with them, but and that goes along with like property taxes as well and economic development. So the county commissioner can influence all of that. But even the Democrats are worried about crime, they're worried about the economy, and they're worried about taxes. And I had a brief conversation with someone, and they said that it's not that they don't want to pay taxes, because some of them do want to or like to pay taxes, but it's that they are now sick of where that money is going. Follow the yellow brick road. Where's the money going? Well, it's being funneled into probably nonprofits that's being absorbed to put that money into candidates to run against other people. And it's this vicious cycle of keeping a certain party in power, especially in Colorado. And what is the most annoying thing to me is that they are using my community as victims and convincing my community that they're victims so that they can stay in power. And I'm not okay with that. If you know anything about the Mexican work ethic, in my opinion, we're some of the most hardworking people that could ever exist. We don't take no for an answer. We hardly take breaks. Holy cow. I don't want to be too general, but we don't stop until the job is done. There was a joke. They said, the pyramids in Gaza, or Giza, right? The Great Pyramids of Giza. They were built, and we don't really know who built those, but there's also pyramids in South America and in Mexico, and we know exactly who built those. There is no doubt that there's a strong worth ethic in my community. And it's terrifying that politicians will vilify uh, or victimize us, to make us feel bad, vilify other groups to make them look terrible, and then leverage us for our vote. In the Mexican community, I know that there's a growing, what's the English word? Kind of resentment towards even Venezuelans. And I ask people why. And they say it's because the Democratic Party is helping them tooth and nail with everything that they have. Meanwhile, they have promised Mexican immigrants so many things and have never accomplished any of them. There is no pathway to citizenship for people who want to be here legally. There is no pathway to have students stay if they want to learn a trade and invest in the community. There's nothing like that. But when you have a fresh, shipment of people from a different country who maybe come from a socialist country and who might bring some of those ideals, not everyone, but some of them that might want to bring those ideals over, they want to influence them to show voters that they empathize with them, and then use them as leverage for other voters. Look, the other party is bad. This party is good. We're helping people. Well, how do you help people? Well, again, going back a couple of minutes, by taking the money, injecting it into nonprofits that take a huge cut off the top, put it back into politicians, and this vicious cycle of power continues. I am sick and tired of the direction that Colorado's going. I love Colorado. It's my home. I do not want to leave. And depending on how the election season goes, I might have to. That's how terrible it is now. Uh, anyway, that's just something I've seen in the community. I know that, I bridge communities. That's one of my strong suits, and I would love to make sure that the Mexican community or the South American community and the Venezuelan community can come together, talk about these issues, and figure out what the best strategy is moving forward. I don't like that there's a resentment, but there's a reason for it. It's being weaponized against voters.
Well, that's very interesting. Definitely, you know, got to echo that sentiment about the nonprofits and these NGOs, these different organizations that are getting so much taxpayer money, millions of dollars of taxpayer money. And some of it does go back to the politicians in terms of campaign contributions or lobbying down at the legislature for those bills that these legislators are supporting. And then, of course, some of it goes to the staff and just these big salaries that we see. And ultimately the problem is not solved. Ultimately the core mission of this money is not being fulfilled. So it's really unfortunate to see that happen. And it's really interesting because I think you're the only one I've heard that from, where a certain segment of the population is kind of resentful towards another segment of the population because they see them getting more of these taxpayer benefits or more of these government handouts as opposed to their group. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, and it's a growing sentiment. I know people who, have construction companies or have landscaping companies who pay a lot in taxes. They pay a lot in insurance. They pay as much as they can for wages to make sure that people can live off of what they pay. And even so, these hardworking people are never given the opportunity to talk to local governments, to talk about crime, to have any benefit in being in the community. It's kind of like, well, you're not you, you're this entity, something construction, you're this entity, and we're going to treat you as if you're that entity. And that's not fair. I know I have a friend who has a concrete company. He's been here for years, and nobody's ever asked them about their opinion about XYZ, right? Uh,
Sure.
they don't have a local voice in government. And I want people to know that voting for Gonzalez, I'm going to go campaign mode a little bit, but voting for Gonzalez would give the community a massive voice. I'm bilingual. I speak English and Spanish very fluently. I want to make sure that there's a bridge so that there's peace among the community, that there's economic development, and that everyone is heard. And that's not what we're seeing in local government at all.
Nice. Well, Licio, I definitely appreciate your passion, your energy. You definitely have a really well thought out idea here of what you're doing as a candidate for commissioner. But why? Why did you decide to get involved in politics? Why did you decide to run for this office?
The main reason is self-defense, because I do not believe that anyone running an office right now, at least for the local level, is really in it for the people, minus maybe a few candidates, right? Very few. There is a blue machine that took over Colorado and has made it a terrible place to live, or at least even a dangerous place to live. So I'm running in self-defense. I've been involved in the community long enough that I know my community. I was a radio DJ for a really long time. I have worked a lot of odd jobs. I had the unfortunate opportunity to be a graduating high school senior in 2008, 2009, when we went through the recession. I've had so many odd jobs that it's not even funny. It's actually better if you name a job that I haven't done versus one that I have, because I've done it all. I've been a baker, I've been a butcher. I don't know if I've done candles. I've got to remember that in my resume. I don't remember. But I've done so many odd jobs. I've worked my butt off in the community, so I know it. And they're not being fairly represented. I talk to people about taxes all the time, and I ask them a simple question. The group that I talked to, raise your hand if you think that the wealthy do not pay their fair share of taxes. Okay. Everyone's hand basically goes up. Okay, then. If you believe that the rich do not pay their fair share, then any tax increase is on you. And it's on me, the normal working class. Anything, any tax increase. Because anyone who has a net worth, even worth it, has attorneys, got CPAs, they've got tax experts that will help them not pay that much money in taxes. It's like, oh, you can save tax on this, this, and this if you do this, this, and this, get $1 as your W-2, be paid in stock options. You don't need to pay taxes. Taxes are for you and me, the W-2s, right? The working class. And it annoys me that politicians will continue to use that line, tax the rich or eat the rich or all of these things, when in reality is they're destroying our paycheck. They're destroying my paycheck. They're destroying everyone else's paycheck. Because again, that money gets funneled into nonprofits. They get funneled back into some politicians. It's a vicious cycle of power. So I got involved to help the community. I want to represent the community. I want to help with property taxes, and I want to make sure that Arapahoe County is poised to move forward. If the projections are true, Arapahoe County will be the largest county in Colorado in terms of population. It is growing. And in order for us to grow, we need space to grow. We can't do it on restrictions. We need space to grow. We need to make sure that people are attracted enough to come here, to start a family. It needs to be safe. And I want to be the voice to make sure that that happens. Because I'll tell you what, as long as the Democrats have been in office, it hasn't happened for a lot of us here. It hasn't happened for a lot of my family. It hasn't happened for a lot of maybe people that are watching this. It has not happened. These promises of all these programs and of this utopia, if we just give a little more money, has not happened. And it has to stop.
Very well said, Eliseo. 100% agree with you there. I think it's really refreshing, hopefully for other people in Colorado as well, to hear that these Democrats who really champion themselves as working class leaders. They really try and all the talking points is about how they're helping the working class and they're helping Colorado workers and this and this and this, but it's not true. The policies have led to worse jobs or no jobs at all, or deteriorating economic conditions, to more crime, to a lack of affordability. All these things are just talk. It's just talk that these Democrats have, that they claim to be these champions for the working class, but all their policies have failed to actually improve the lives of people who are just average working Coloradans and their families. And it's making our community less safe. It's making it less attractive for businesses. It's really putting us in a bad situation. So hopefully it's a really refreshing message for people out there, that they're hearing that, oh my gosh, I don't necessarily have, I mean, I think the gig is hopefully up, that people are kind of learning that we're kind of getting that shift in our culture, or our state, where people realize that the Democrats are not benefiting the working class. But, we have somebody like you who's not a Democrat, not a Republican either, who's running for office, and is going to be somebody out there who's going to be, fighting for and defending regular average Coloradans.
Yeah, I wanted to highlight this point. I went to a forum for an organization that had all the candidates on there, right? And they asked the question about how we are going to take care of the elderly generation, because a lot of people in Arapahoe County are going to be they're going to retire in place. They don't want to move to Florida, especially with certain weather conditions. They don't have enough money to go to California, and they definitely don't want to go to like searing hot places, Texas, Arizona. They don't want to go to Wyoming. They want to stay in their home, right? How is the community going to take care of them? Everyone else said taxes, everyone else. And I was like, guys, we could find free market solutions to take care of our community. For example, if I'm elected, I would love to start a program where high schoolers can earn credits by helping out the community, right? It's a public thing where you can get credit for mowing someone's lawn or helping them with groceries, right? Or doing these kinds of things. That's a way that the community can give back, and you're teaching kiddos hard work ethic. You're teaching kiddos how to take care of the elderly, and none of that relies on tax funding from or tax increases. None of it. It all relies on, do you want extra credit for these things? Okay, let's do it this way, right? Now, the program, if it is available, it would have to be built out, right? Hopefully, teachers can volunteer to like supervise all of that stuff. But there are ideas that I think the younger generation, especially millennials, Gen Z, can offer that are not just increased taxes, that are not just let's debruce, let's get rid of Tabor. There are other solutions. Politicians, especially the ones right now, can't even work a PowerPoint. They don't know how to make a PDF. They don't have the tech reliability, right? They don't have the tech literacy. They're not literate in technology. Well, because they're not literate in technology, they're probably really disconnected from the voter base. And I think that's a problem. If you don't know how to work TikTok, if you don't know how to work Instagram, you're gonna be really hard to relate to, right? Because I'm not 70 years old. I don't have a pension plan, right? I don't have land somewhere. I'm 34. I've got a job. I've got a wife. I've got a dog, and the economic situation in the whole country is not going in the right place. I went to the supermarket, I got cheese, I got tortillas, and I got toilet paper. All of that cost me $56. Are you out of your mind? There needs to be changes, and people need to know that the change starts locally. We could change the state if local matters, or we could change the state if they focus on the local government, your neighbor that's representing you, you can influence them so that they can talk to other people so that you can make change. I wholeheartedly believe that the change starts local and change starts with us and change starts with me, hopefully.
Yeah, I really appreciate the emphasis on local. I think that is the most important thing. That's definitely a huge part of a free state Colorado, never talking about national news, just talking about what's happening here in our community. And it's so empowering too, because you get involved at that local level, like what you're doing out there, talking to people in your community, running for office. You can actually see the impact that's possible. You can see what kind of a positive force you can be in the community. So many people who pay attention to politics focus on the presidential race or something else that's going on that they have no control over, and it's so disempowering. When you show up to your city council meeting, you show up to your county commissioner meeting, you really realize how few people are actually paying attention to these things and how impactful your actions can be at that local level. Just quickly, a lot of people know we have county commissioners, but what do they do? Like, what is a county commissioner for people who don't know? What kind of role do they have in our daily lives?
That's a great question. So, my understanding of what a county commissioner does is the county commissioner is in charge of things like overseeing or overseeing county departments. They hire the management teams, they administer county services, they do things like create and adopt budgets, they adopt city ordinances or county ordinances as well. They approve land use decisions. They act as like the final say of property value protests, and they appoint residents to serve on boards, and then they also go out and represent the county at like regional events or national events where other commissioners get together and talk about the issues that they need to solve. So I know that was a mouthful. It was a very good educational experience when I learned about what the county commissioner did. And the main thing is that people need to know is that during COVID, it was the county commissioners that locked everyone down. Did the governor do it? I don't remember if he did it for a little bit or for not, but he left that authority up to the commissioners, and the commissioners did that. So if you weren't able to see your loved one, if you weren't able to go to the store, if you were a church organization and couldn't have services of faith, they county commissioners were the ones that implemented all of that. And in retrospect, we could say that it might have been best if they left it up to the autonomy of the people. I personally would have probably tried to play it as safe as I could, try to limit me going out, but that's me personally. People should have had that freedom and did not have the freedom. I lost my daddy, and according to people, it was due to COVID, and I was not able to say goodbye while he was still alive. The hospital had some weird protocol where they had to disconnect him in order for us to say goodbye, which was the craziest thing I've ever heard. But I was very happy to see my dad at least in the flesh with all this weird safety gear or whatever that they had, the PPE. Um, it was a sad thing, and I can relate to a lot of people who probably lost loved ones during COVID that could not hold their hand, could not kiss them goodbye. It's just an evil, I think, that could have been avoided, and local government could have helped families with that. I have a cousin who lost his 501(c)(3) status as a church because he stayed open to the faith community during COVID. I don't see pot shops or I don't see liquor stores losing their licenses. I don't see big conglomerates losing any of their licenses, but a church that just wanted to help the faithful with prayer and stuff, they lost their 501(c)(3) status. That's crazy. There's a lot of bad being done, but uh, I think voting locally and supporting people that support things like independence from government, reduce taxes, partnering with organizations to help reduce crime. There is freedom in that. And I hope that there's this wave of people that just come together and make a positive change for the community. That's the real reason why I ran. Just kidding. All the other ones too. But one of the reasons is I want to see the positive change. I want to make sure that the next generation, right? Some kid going to Overland High School or John Smith High School, well, William Smith High School, or Aurora Central, that they go, you know what? That guy ran for county commissioner. He did a pretty okay job. I want to run too. That's why I'm running. I want to ensure that the next generation can get the courage to do it. So
Awesome. Awesome. Really glad you mentioned COVID. For some people, it seems like the Twilight Zone. It's like it almost didn't happen because it's hard to believe that we went through all of that those years ago. And there unfortunately hasn't been a lot of accountability, from the governor to the county level to all these different mayors who are begging the governor to lock things down. I haven't really seen a lot of these people being held accountable in terms of their elections and really pushing back against this authoritarianism that we saw back then. And you're right. You're 100% right. It was these county health departments who all of a sudden had so much power to shut down the community, to shut down businesses, put people out of work, and it was really the county commissioners who appoint these county health people, who appoint the director, the executive director of these county health departments, and they're the ones that can really hold the county health departments accountable. Because that was the big question. It says, oh my gosh, here we go. There's for me, it was Jefferson County Public Health is doing all of these things, and they're sending inspectors out, and they're trying to shut down our businesses. A place I was working at the time. It's like, what do we do about it? This is an unelected bureaucrat who's coming in here trying to control our lives and telling us that it's illegal to go to work. I mean, but it was really the county commissioners who really had the ability to prevent that or stop that, and are going to be able to prevent that next time. And if it ever, unfortunately, hopefully never happens, but if it ever tried, having somebody who believes in that liberty and freedom in that county commissioner role would be really important.
I agree with you 100%. That's why I would love to see more people run for office, not just the one or two milk toast candidates that certain parties produce, right? And just kind of do a haphazard job of running for office. I really want to see local people go out, talk to your county commissioners, run against them if you don't like them, talk to voters, get involved in your community to figure out where the problems are. When I go and I door knock, I tell people where I live. I live down the street. I live here and here. People know where I live. And if I'm elected, I'm gonna get an earful if I don't do a good job. Actually, I was talking to a high school and they said, "What would you do if none of your things, like if you had like a magic wand and you were granted everything, what would you do if none of them worked?" I said, "Well, I would find a good, group of advisors and I would quit because that would mean that I didn't do a good job for the county." How many politicians are able to say that they would quit? No, none of them would. They want to run even while they're 70 or 80 years old because that's all they know how to do. We need to keep politicians accountable. We need people that aren't politicians to run for office. That's what we need. And the reason why that's beneficial is because they know their community. I know my community better than any politician does. And I really hope that people are inspired to run and just take back Colorado.
Definitely, definitely, Alicia. Well, any parting words here before we end this today? What would you like to leave people with?
Yes, I would like to let people know that I know local politics, local races aren't the most sexy. They're not the most shiny. They're not the most glamorous ones to run. But in my humble opinion, they are the most important because they directly impact me, and they directly impact you. Anyone who's listening, local politics is where it's at. And if you hear people want to do things like increase taxes, remove Tabor, uh, defund, right, police departments, or do all of these things, you really start to ask yourself who matters to them. Is it their constituents or is it something else? Is it their career? Is it a political party? Is it power? Who really matters to them? And this is why local elections are so important because you know who's going to run. They'll talk to you. You can get in their ear and talk to them about things that matter to you. So, as unglamorous as it seems, local politics is where it starts. But to the people watching who don't want to get involved in politics, which you're probably really smart, uh, I would suggest if you have extra time to volunteer, there are so many families that could use a blessing at the local food bank, or if you want to volunteer for humanitarian organizations too, like certain organizations that help pets, right, that don't have homes. All of those things will make a positive impact in your community. Heck, helping somebody with groceries at the grocery store just carry them out is a massive change. I don't know how that would work out in Arapahoe County because of the shift in culture where everything is just dangerous now. But we have to be the change to move forward. Change starts local. If you're in Arapahoe County, vote Gonzalez for Arapahoe County Commissioner. And yeah, visit my website. So you can find me at gonzalez4acc.com. You could also make donations there and get involved in as much as you can, especially for the young people. Not saying that the wiser generation can't, but we're inheriting all of that. We need to figure out what the heck we're going to do because we need more young leaders that'll take the reins in Colorado.
Awesome, sir. Well, I really appreciate talking to you. Wish you the best of luck on your commissioner campaign and keep us updated if there's any new developments.
Awesome. Thanks, Brandon. I really appreciate your time. Take it easy.
All right. All right. Take care, sir.
See ya.